A forged signature, frozen accounts, a stolen business, a family empire built on legal paperwork sharp enough to destroy lives without leaving obvious blood behind. When she uncovers the affair, she also uncovers a brutal financial scheme designed to strip her of everything before she can escape. This story plays like a legal thriller fused with true crime suspense, where every contract hides another layer of betrayal.
It was a rainy Seattle night during a tech summit, just 12 weeks before my baby was due, when my world imploded. My husband Marcus was on stage, delivering a keynote on artificial intelligence, a titan of the industry. I should have been in the front row, the glowing, supportive wife, but a sudden dizzy spell sent me back to our waterfront condo. Just rest, Ilara, he'd whispered, kissing my temple, his jacket smelling of rain and ambition. He'd left a prototype of his new smart hub on the kitchen island. I went to turn it off when I heard a live audio feed. A test. It was his voice, speaking to a woman named Nina. The audience is captivated. I wish you were here to celebrate with me afterward. My heart froze. She was his lead programmer. It had to be work, but a sickening certainty washed over me. My life was a carefully constructed illusion, and the walls were closing in. I'm so glad you could join this stream. Before we go on, I want to know where you're from. Drop your city in the chat. It's amazing to see this community grow. Just a warning, this story delves into some intense psychological manipulation to expose a chilling reality. The identities have been altered, but the message about trusting your instincts is universal. The condo smelled of the Puget Sound and the orchids Marcus had delivered weekly. They sat on the quartz countertop, their flawless petals a stark contrast to the fear knotting in my stomach. Our home, cantilevered over the water, was a minimalist masterpiece of glass and steel, the Seattle skyline our personal art installation. We had been together for 2 years, an intense romance that began when I, Ilara Vance, a prominent architect, met the city's most celebrated tech mogul. My husband, Marcus Thorne, was charismatic, visionary, and 10 years my senior. His hand always felt like an anchor in mine. To our future, he'd toast, his gray eyes electric. To the Vance Thorne empire. I'd clink my sparkling water against his whiskey, my chest tight with happiness. Everyone called me the lucky one. My own firm was worried I'd lose my creative edge. Then Marcus appeared at an architectural bid, talking sustainable design with a ferocity he usually reserved for venture capitalists, and my independent world merged with his. I was 38, he was 48. My family was wary of his fast paced world, which I dismissed as protective caution. When you feel it, right? That's what I believed. Tonight, the rain streaked down the windows, turning the city lights into a watercolor painting. Our daughter was due in the spring. It was meant to be perfect. Then the voices from the smart hub continued. It was the same live feed, with Nina's voice now clear. Marcus must have left the speaker on in his green room. Is she back at the condo yet? Not knowing if she can hear is making me nervous. My hand shook as I turned up the volume. He'd shown me how to access the developer settings once to test a new feature. Login *1541, his first company's name. I saw my own face reflected in the screen's polished surface, a woman about to overhear her own downfall. He was an innovator, a loving husband, my partner. I should have shut it off. I should have stormed down there and confronted him. But I needed the truth. I kept listening. Their conversation stretched back over the last hour, intimate jokes, shared plans. My blood turned to ice. Nina wasn't just his employee, she was his partner in everything. They discussed business strategy, software patents, and the complete cluelessness of his pregnant wife. My architectural firm, my life's work, he called it my elegant distraction. That's when my heart began to fracture. I listened, my finger frozen on the volume control. This was bigger than an affair. It was a hostile takeover of my life. The project integration is almost complete, Marcus said. My lawyers are airtight. By the time the baby arrives, everything will be under the Thorn corporate umbrella. I didn't get it. under his umbrella, away from what? Nina's reply made my breath catch. And the lead architect? The lead architect. Me. Pregnancy at her age has its risks, Marcus said coolly. Especially for a career focused woman. It would be a terrible loss, a brilliant mind gone too soon. The air in the room grew thin. The walls felt like they were shrinking. What about his first? Nina asked. His name was David, 35. They said he had a tragic rock climbing accident in the Cascades. It was ruled a misadventure. On the live feed, I could hear them laughing about something. The muffled sounds of the tech summit in the background. This wasn't a romance, this was a business strategy. My pulse throbbed in my ears. This can't be happening. You are his second chance, Nina's voice purred from just moments ago. Don't mess this up like he did with David. I'm not playing the subordinate for another decade to become the next Mrs. Thorne. I had merged my career with his, trusting him without question. Tonight, hearing their scheme, I knew I had to escape. I shook my head, backing away from the smart hub. This is a bad dream. You are misunderstanding all of this. She'll be honored posthumously, Marcus said on the feed, his tone casual from just before he went on stage. My foundation will ensure the Vance Tower is completed. Her designs, her legacy, her child, it will all carry the Thorne name. She will be remembered as a tragic genius. He was planning to erase me. I glanced at the door. Marcus would be home soon, his expression a perfect portrait of a devoted husband. My name is Elara Vance. I built my firm from the ground up for 15 years before he swept into my life. I have put my soul into my work. This baby, she's all I have left. Go now. Now. But how? I thought, my panic clawing at my throat. The building's digital security, our car's tracking systems, our joint accounts. He controlled every bit and byte. Go to the studio, a voice inside me screamed. The old workshop in Fremont. It's the one place that's still off the grid. Go now before he gets back. Don't text a single person. Don't trigger any digital alerts. Just disappear. I looked at the digital photo frame on the console. Marcus and I, his hand on my swollen belly. Why would I believe an audio feed? I whispered. His smiling, handsome face in the picture seemed to mock me, because his first partner is dead. Before doubt could paralyze me, the smart hub lit up with an alert. The screen read, Marcus arriving. The robotic voice was an alarm bell, screaming at me to run. The keynote was done. He was on his way up. I looked at the hub, the source of my terror. He was not the man I loved. He was a predator in a designer suit. And for the first time in my life, I felt a raw, primal fear. When I looked back at the screen, I saw the feed was still active. I heard Nina's voice say, Call me when it's done. I didn't wait for more. I didn't second guess it. I just ran. My purse was on the entryway bench. I grabbed it, my fingers struggling with the zipper. The city's tech elite were in that conference hall applauding my husband. I walked, trying to stay calm, toward the service elevator to the garage. The ride down felt like a free fall. The valet gave me a friendly wave. Heading home so soon, Mrs. Thorne? I forced a smile. Just need to grab some blueprints from the studio. He nodded, hitting the button to open the garage gate. The damp Seattle air felt like a shock. I drove for miles, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. Hiding in a dark side street, I disabled my phone's GPS. 5 minutes. I waited, my hand shielding my stomach. I saw the sleek lines of my car in the rain. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement. Rough Summit? The parking attendant had asked. You have no idea, I whispered. I merged onto the viaduct. I rested my head against the cold window, watching my city become a trap. Modern high-rises, chic restaurants, the park where he first proposed our partnership. The city I loved now felt like his territory. I looked in my console. A few $100s in emergency cash. One keycard to my old studio. It was all that was mine. The conversation was seared into my brain. The lies about David's tragic accident. The way he and Nina planned their empire. The way he would hold me at night and say, You and I are building the future, Elara. 2 years ago, I didn't even know Marcus Thorne existed. It was at a green energy conference. I was a rising architect looking for innovative partners. He was my visionary soulmate. Now I knew he was just a shark who saw my life's work as his next acquisition. Marcus had stood beside a model of a solar powered skyscraper and said, "You have the mind of someone who knows if this is a revolution or just a beautiful fantasy." I laughed. He had a way of making you feel like the most brilliant person in the room. We spent that first night walking along the waterfront, debating the future of cities. He was a Seattle native who spoke of a devastating end to his first major partnership. He had my business card before the night was over. By the fall, we were the city's new it couple. In December, on a ferry to Bainbridge Island, he got down on one knee. "I know this is fast," he said, "but I feel like I've been searching for you my whole life. Let's build everything together, Ilara." I said yes. I was 38, pregnant, and tired of building alone. We eloped at the courthouse the next month. No one there, just us. We took a short trip to the San Juan Islands. That's when he brought out the device. We were on the deck of our rental. "Sweetheart, a little bit of logistics," Marcus said, handing me the tablet, "for the Vance Tower integration." I looked at him over my mug of tea. "What is all this?" "Just a standard partnership sync," he said with a relaxed grin, "so we can merge our project platforms. Scan your thumbprint right here." The air was cold and the view of the water was stunning. I felt so in sync, so perfectly matched. I pressed my thumb against the screen. "All done," I said. "Perfect," Marcus smiled. "Now our futures are aligned." I returned to my gallery plans, lost in the city view. The thought never crossed my mind. Not until that night in my office, looking at an insurance appraisal for a $75,000 painting and seeing Maya's name as the new policy holder. The brokerage was one I'd never heard of. I called my insurer for details. My car pulled up to my art gallery, a space I'd built from nothing. It was my soul, the only thing that was truly mine. Inside, the scent of oil paint and old wood was my comfort. I logged into my gallery's wealth management portal. $300,000, my entire career, my child's security. I initiated a transfer to a private trust, an account Liam didn't know existed. I hit confirm. An error message appeared. Transfer failed. Administrative restriction on account. A cold wave washed over me. I tried again. Same message. Again. My stomach plummeted. I called the bank's private client line. A banker answered. "I need to know why my account is frozen." I could hear the click of a keyboard. A brief silence. "Ma'am, a security hold was initiated this afternoon by the party with joint signatory authority." "I'm the only signatory." More clicking. "Our records show full signatory rights were granted on June 10th to Dr. Liam Thorne." June 10th. The hospital gala, the celebratory champagne, the tablet. I hadn't read a single word. "No," I whispered, "that's not possible." "You will have to resolve this with Dr. Thorne, ma'am, or come into a branch." The line went dead. I sat in the vast silence of my gallery, the phone cold in my hand. Maya's name on that insurance policy was seared into my brain. He's building their new life. With her. The gallery felt like a tomb. A photo of Liam and me at a fundraiser was on my desk. He'd placed it there himself last month, a gesture I'd found so endearing. Now it felt like an enemy flag planted in my territory. I walked to the window, staring out at the city. The light swam as the reality hit me. I wasn't his partner, I was his latest acquisition, and my gallery had just been stolen. I never went home. I sat in my chair, staring into the dark until the sun came up. At 7, I made tea, my hands shaking. The banker's words replayed in my head. Asterisk signatory rights granted on June 10th. That night at the gala, the tablet, the hospital foundation papers. I opened my laptop, my fingers feeling thick and clumsy, and searched my email. I found it. An email from June 10th. From Thorne Medical Philanthropy. Subject, Building Our Legacy. I clicked it open. A single sentence in the PDF. "My dearest Eleanor, a digital copy for our records." I downloaded the document. My gut tightened as the file loaded. The title read, First Commonwealth Bank. joint asset management, and signatory authority agreement. It wasn't a donation pledge, it was a complete surrender. I scrolled through the 60-page agreement, my vision blurring. Eleanor Grace Vance hereby assigns Dr. Liam Thorne unconditional and irrevocable signatory authority over account number 3418, including all rights of disbursement, transfer, and restriction. Eleanor Grace Vance hereby assigns Dr. Liam Thorne complete control over all business assets of the Vance Gallery Holdings. This authority is effective immediately and is irreversible without the notarized consent of both signatories. My signature was on the last page. I read the fine print again. The joint signatory may place an immediate 10-day administrative hold on all accounts if irregular transactions are suspected, without notice to the primary holder. That's what he'd done. After his assistant accidentally sent me that appraisal, he knew I'd moved to protect what was mine. He used the signature I gave him while we celebrated our baby to lock me out of my own business. By 8:30 that morning, I was on the phone with First Commonwealth Bank. I had showered at the gallery's small apartment and put on fresh clothes. I had a strategy. Stay calm, be methodical. Get this reversed. The bank's senior manager, a Mr. Davies, listened without interruption. I was deceived into signing this. My husband claimed it was a pledge for our child's hospital wing. The signatory authority is fraudulent, and I demand it be revoked. I understand your position, Mrs. Thorne, he said calmly. But without a notarized release from Dr. Thorne, my hands are tied. He tricked me, I insisted, my voice cracking. If you believe a crime was committed, you should notify the police. As it stands, the 10-day hold is within protocol. When does it end? It started last night. It lifts on October 3rd at 10 a.m., unless Dr. Thorne decides to extend it. 10 more days, and he could extend it forever. How do I get my money? You'll need the Dr. Thorne's authorization. I drove to our brownstone in Beacon Hill, ready to confront him. My key fob didn't work. The doorman stopped me. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Thorne. Your access was revoked, per Dr. Thorne's request. A new Audi pulled to the curb. His resident Maya got out, shot me a look of pure victory, and walked straight into my building. I'm pregnant, I had told my brother Marcus, my voice brimming with joy. He smiled, but his eyes held a familiar caution. Weeks later, our advisor called about a $200,000 payment for antique surgical tools. Liam said it was for a new hospital exhibit. I told Marcus, who's a lawyer. That doesn't feel right, Ellie. I couldn't find any record of the dealer. Marcus called me back. It's a shell corporation, Eleanor, registered to a Dr. Maya Singh. My world tilted as I saw her face in a photo with Liam at a medical conference. That's his new resident, I said, the words catching in my throat. The payment records are clean, Marcus said, his voice grim. The funds were wired to a real estate group on July 12th, the day after we heard our baby's heartbeat. She's the only owner on the title. Liam engineered this perfectly. As of now, that brownstone is legally hers. You'd have to sue. The paper trail was perfect. Liam had used a shell company, with Maya as the front, funded by their joint account. He told her it was a discreet investment bonus for her help on a research project. She was no pawn, she was a partner in his scheme. In the gleaming lobby of my gallery, I was met by the new security chief, a man named Arthur. He'd been hired yesterday while I was at an auction. Acting on my husband Liam's orders, he'd changed the locks, updated the alarm codes, and erased my access to my own business. It was all authorized by a legal order, backed by paperwork I was now powerless to fight. I'm truly sorry, Arthur said again, his eyes filled with real sympathy. I was too stunned to speak. He returned to his post. I felt adrift in the huge, quiet space. Staring at the door I could no longer open, I had lost it all. I walked out through the heavy glass doors onto the Boston street. The autumn wind felt sharp. Then I saw them. A black Bentley and a dark Mercedes were waiting. Liam got out of the Bentley. He didn't look surprised, just irritated. An older woman stepped out of the Mercedes, perfectly matching Arthur's description. Late 60s, steel gray hair in a severe chic bun, wearing a Chanel suit that was worth more than my first gallery space. Dr. Catherine Thorne, Liam's mother. She assessed me like a failed diagnosis. Eleanor, Liam started, his voice tense. But his mother spoke over him, her tone like ice. Mrs. Vance, she said, it seems you've had a serious lapse in judgment. Catherine Thorne, a board member at the Thorne Medical Group, held up a tablet. You signed over the controlling interest of your gallery's assets to the Family Foundation on June 10th, she said, her voice clinical. It is now under Liam's sole management. Displayed on the screen was a document from her foundation, Philanthropic Asset Transfer, Suffolk County. My name was listed as the donor, Liam's as the fiduciary. The address was my gallery. A clause noted the transfer of assets valued at $20 million. At the bottom was a perfect digital copy of my signature, notarized electronically, dated June 10th, 2024. That's a lie, I whispered. I would never agree to that. Catherine enlarged the signature. It's been biometrically verified, Mrs. Vance. The transfer is final and legally airtight. My mind shot back to June 10th, a Friday. We were at the hospital's annual charity gala. He said he needed my signature for a large pledge they were announcing. He had called it investing in our child's future. I was distracted, talking with friends about names for the baby, glowing with happiness. Just sign here, my love, he had murmured, handing me the tablet. I had scrawled my name without reading a single line. It wasn't an investment in our future, it was the funding for my ruin. It was a surgical removal of my life, and I had signed the consent form. You lied to me, I whispered, looking at Liam. You finalized the donation, Catherine corrected. Your decision not to read the terms is not our liability, the paperwork is filed. The transfer is binding. A couple leaving a nearby shop paused to look. Catherine pitched her voice just enough for them to overhear. I know this must be an emotional time, but our foundation manages these pledges with complete transparency. Your attempt to withdraw from a legal charitable agreement is highly irregular. I own that gallery, I fought back. I built it from nothing. You did own its assets, Catherine said smoothly, before you generously gifted them to the Thorne Family Foundation on June 10th. More people were stopping now. Catherine put on a mask of deep sympathy. Mrs. Vance is obviously under a great deal of strain. Pregnancy is demanding, but this is a simple financial matter. She made it sound so proper, so noble, making me look like the unstable one. You're delusional, I whispered, my hands trembling. Both of you are liars. Eleanor Vance's smile was razor thin. Our family's name means something in this city. Making wild accusations has consequences, dear. I'd choose your next words very carefully. The other family members at the table suddenly found their plates fascinating. Julian, who had been quiet, stood up, his face a canvas of deep concern. Izzy, please, I begged him. Tell them what you told me. He shook his head slowly. Isabel, honey, you're exhausted. This pregnancy is a lot to handle. Don't you dare, I breathed. We just think you need to rest, he said, glancing at his mother. We're all worried. Eleanor nodded, her sympathy a cruel performance. There are some lovely wellness retreats, Isabel. We can make all the arrangements. The opulent dining room felt like a cage. Every averted gaze was a judgment. Julian came to my side. It's done, Izzy, he said quietly. You have no proof. Let us help you, for the baby. A surge of fury cut through my fear. I fled. I ran out into the chilly San Francisco night, the fog blurring the streetlights. Someone shouted my name, but the sound was swallowed by the city. I didn't stop until I was huddled on a bench in Lafayette Park, struggling to breathe. My watch vibrated. Not from Julian. It was a notification on our shared family tablet, a calendar reminder. Nina's flight confirmation, SFO to Cabo, 2 p.m. Underneath a note, anniversary getaway. Our anniversary was next month, and I wasn't going to Cabo. My blood ran cold. The flight was for this afternoon. I found Marcus Thorne's new office tucked away in a gritty Soma alleyway. It was a world away from the gleaming Vance HQ. He looked startled to see me, a ghost from his past life. He was thinner, his expensive suit replaced by a worn sweater, and the confidence I remembered was gone, replaced by a deep seated weariness. He clutched a cup of coffee like a lifeline. Isabel, he said, his voice rough. He didn't get up. He just stared at me with eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. I sat down opposite his cluttered desk. You tried to tell me something was wrong, I said. Why should I trust you now? Because, he said, the words heavy with bitterness, I know what Julian Vance is willing to destroy to protect his secrets. He will ruin you, just like he and Nina ruined me. My hands instinctively covered my stomach. What did they do? Marcus let out a harsh laugh. Her name is Nina Rossi, a genius coder he hired right out of Stanford. She and I were the original partners building the company from my garage. A bitter look crossed his face. Julian was the frontman, the charmer. I was the architect of the code. We were supposed to go public in 2022. By that fall, he'd used Nina's access to lock me out of my own system, claiming I stole proprietary data. So suddenly, I whispered. That's how they operate. Marcus's knuckles were white around his mug. I told Julian she was a snake. He accused me of being jealous of her talent, said I was threatened. He stared into his coffee. He said I was holding the company back. I practically raised Julian after his father left. He was like a brother to me. A month after they forced me out, Marcus's voice was devoid of emotion. They announced the new VTech platform, my platform. They called it a revolutionary breakthrough. My name wasn't mentioned. His voice dropped to an icy whisper. They even tried to blame the initial data breach on me. Planted evidence. I saw the initial report, the IP address traced back to Nina's terminal. A wave of dizziness washed over me. I started digging, Marcus said. I still had some friends inside. We looked at everyone who had been pushed out over the last 5 years, and that's when we saw it. Saw what? The pattern? He spun his monitor around. It showed an encrypted file with a list of 5 names. Amelia Chen, Marcus said, pointing to the first name. Our lead engineer in 2018, forced out after a trumped-up harassment claim just before her stock options vested. He scrolled down. David Lee, 2020, head of R&D, accused of selling secrets to a competitor. It was a setup. Another name. Sophia Grant, 2021, our CFO. A manufactured insider trading scandal. His finger moved down the list. Ben Carter, Chloe Kim, Marcus finally looked at me. And then me. 5 key innovators in 7 years, all pushed out under a cloud of scandal. All their work absorbed into projects that Nina Rossi now leads, and every single one of them was silenced with an ironclad NDA and a threat of litigation from the Vance family lawyers. I felt like I couldn't breathe. You're the personal angle, Marcus added. There was another before me, a woman Julian was engaged to, named Sarah. Died last year, a supposed hiking accident. The story never sat right with me. He uses people, integrates them, and when they're no longer useful, they're discarded. Why isn't he exposed? I whispered. I tried. Marcus's voice was hollow. I took everything I had to a lawyer in the fall of 2022. The data logs, the timelines, sworn affidavits from other employees. We built a case. The tech blogs were watching Julian Vance. His ruthless tactics were becoming an open secret, but they couldn't prove his direct involvement. Everything was routed through Nina. The paper trail is perfect. Julian is insulated and his mother is a bulldog. What did she do? Marcus's face tightened. She buried me. January 2023. We were getting too close to the truth. 1 month we were preparing to file a suit. The next my life was being torn apart by private investigators and tabloid stories. They painted me as a bitter, washed-up founder. They destroyed my credibility. I listened, my heart pounding. A year of fighting them in court wiped out my savings. I lost everything. A gag order prevents me from speaking about my time at the company. I can only watch. His hands were clenched. Then I saw the announcement of your wedding. I saw you with him at that charity ball. You looked so happy, his hand on your stomach. And I understood. You weren't a partner to be discarded. You were his final rebranding. Why didn't you try to tell me? He would have known, Marcus said. And you were in love. Once you sign that postnup, Isabel, your finances were tied to his. And when he's done with this perfect family phase, you'll be another liability he needs to manage, just like the rest of us. The small office felt suffocating. The hum of the server rack sounded like a scream. What do I do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Marcus leaned forward. We need irrefutable proof. Something his mother can't spin. Julian is arrogant, he said. He documents his entire life. There's a private server in his home office in the penthouse. I have an old backdoor access code from when I set up his system years ago. I know the architecture, but I can't get past the new physical security. He looked at me, his gaze intense. But you can. I shook my head, my heart hammering against my ribs. I can't just walk into his office and download his entire life. You are his wife, Isabel, Marcus said, his voice low and urgent. If we don't expose him before this IPO, he'll be untouchable. And then he will find a new way to discard you. He will not stop. His words cut through the chaos in my head. What's on that server? I asked. Everything, Marcus promised. The unencrypted emails, the real business proposals, the digital trail that proves he and Nina conspired to push every single one of us out. The proof of how his mother made it all disappear. I shut my eyes thinking of my gallery, the life I had built. Julian's soft voice replayed in my mind. We're a team, you and I. Marcus was right. I could leave and wait for him to find a new way to betray someone else, or I could fight back. My eyes opened. Tell me what I need to do. We left the office and stepped into the damp evening air. The city's pulse felt distant and threatening. Marcus walked with a coiled energy, his gaze sweeping the street. I trailed him, my thoughts a whirlwind of fear and purpose. I had said yes, but to what I wasn't entirely sure. There's a cafe nearby, Marcus said. The Daily Grind. It's anonymous. We can walk through the plan. I nodded, my throat too tight for words. The place was a brightly lit, generic cafe, nestled between a yoga studio and a dispensary. The room was all sterile white and chrome, a typical San Francisco spot. A barista with a bored expression barely looked up as we entered. We took a small table by the window. Marcus ordered 2 black coffees. I asked for a tea and watched the steam rise. He placed a slim, battered laptop on the table. He entered a password and turned the screen towards me. You need to see this, he said. It was a screen recording. He hit play. A woman's voice, sharp and confident, filled the air around us. It was Nina. It's a clip from my last video conference with them, Marcus said quietly. Most of my records were wiped, but this was saved on a personal cloud drive. I leaned in, watching. The clip was from the day he was fired. She was talking about a project and a feeling of being undermined by Julian's personal life. And then one casual, vicious sentence made my body go rigid. He'll never touch my prenup file, my own little piece of insurance against him. What does that mean? I asked. Mark saw me staring blankly at the tablet. The Apex Trust, that was supposed to be for our baby. A 7-figure fund Richard started after the Seaport redevelopment deal, our family's entire future. My voice felt distant. A message came through on his linked account from her, Isabel. I finally met his eyes. It was a screenshot of a wire transfer to some holding company I didn't recognize. What did the message say? Mark asked gently. It said, Phase 1 is a go handsome. This is more than cheating, Mark. It's a planned demolition. So what's the target? His shadow ledger. He keeps a completely separate set of books, fully encrypted. It has to be stored on his primary work server. That Seaport contract was meant to make our architecture firm the biggest in Boston. Richard was going to name me an executive partner. Then suddenly he was never home. My chest tightened. Did you ever get access to that server? No, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He migrated everything to his downtown office after the deal was signed, claimed it was for enhanced cybersecurity. Whenever I asked, he'd say I was worrying too much, that I should just relax for the baby. I took a shaky breath. Then he had me sign a stack of documents. He called them standard estate planning forms. He brought them home the day after I told him I was pregnant. A cold, heavy dread settled deep inside me. He never gave me copies. He was using the pregnancy as a cover, I said, my voice cracking on the last word. He said the stress was dangerous for the baby, a way to wall me off from his new partner. I saw Richard's face, always so composed, working late into the night. Our life together felt like a memory. I had no one else to call. He would put his hand on my belly and say, I can't mess this up. This one has to be perfect for our family. The memory burned. I blinked back tears. So, what's the plan? My cousin Leo unrolled a building schematic on my counter. The Vantage Point Tower, overlooking the harbor, 70 floors. This is his corner office. My old company set up their network security back in 2023. I still have the backdoor credentials. He drew a red circle around the executive wing. The weekend guard is an old army buddy, Leo said. He does his top floor sweep between midnight and 1 a.m. He won't question me. Isabel's office is nearby, but the goal is the server closet. Richard has become obsessed with data security since the market swings. My financial advisor reviews the reports, but he's only looking at profits and losses. If we're quick, we have an opening. And the servers? Richard's primary server requires a security fob and a fingerprint scan. I can't get that, but I know who can. Who? His old lead tech, a guy named Kenji. He's on my payroll now. Isabel had him fired for questioning her travel expenses. He told me everything. He gave me the root password to the offsite backup and the physical location of Richard's ghost drives. I stared at him. You've been planning this. For a little while, Leo admitted. But you needed to see it clearly, to have a real reason. I needed an operative he would never suspect to see on a camera feed. Me? I looked at the blueprint, at the red circle around my husband's private office, and pictured myself creeping through the halls after midnight. The idea was terrifying, absurd, but the last 24 hours had been absurd. What will we find there? I asked. His whole other life. Leo said Richard's new partner, Isabel, records everything. Memos, secret agreements, copies of every check he's written her. She's incredibly greedy and dangerously overconfident. She doesn't like digital trails. It's all on an encrypted solid state drive, locked in her desk safe, a Kensington S7 model with a standard keypad. You have the combination? Kenji gave me a clue. It's a date. We'll figure out the rest once we're inside. I took a deep breath. This was real. When? I asked. Tonight, November 12th. The night guard is a guy named Manny. Total slacker. Loves true crime podcasts. We enter at 1:45, right after his patrol starts. We'll have until 4 a.m. I gave a slow, deliberate nod. Let's do it. Leo rolled up the blueprint. One last thing. I met his gaze. Your design firm, Leo said. Chloe Design. I've been running traces on their network traffic. Isabel doesn't just want your husband's money. She wants his entire business portfolio, and that includes the clients you manage. Your firm is a key asset. It's worth what? Almost 2 million. Richard is your number one client. I replied 1.8 million from the Seaport project alone. Leo said, if your business reputation is damaged, Richard has cause to terminate your contracts. If he severs ties, your firm collapses. Isabel can then acquire your client list for pennies on the dollar through a new subsidiary she controls. My stomach clenched. You think I'm her next target? I think you're already in her sights. Leo said, has she been acting strange? Unusually helpful? Asking pointed questions about your billing? I remembered Isabel's phone call just yesterday. Her voice was pure honey, but her words were laced with poison. Richard was just saying your latest project invoice looked a bit inflated. He's worried your vendors are taking advantage, I repeated, my voice a whisper. Leo's expression hardened. That's her move. She manufactures doubt, plants lies, drives a wedge between you and your own husband. By the time Richard realizes what's happening, you're already isolated. We need to phone him right now. Leo said, before she cements her story. I stood up, my entire body shaking. Okay. We walked to Leo's car, a dark sedan idling by my brownstone. The Boston streets were quiet and empty. The whole city felt hostile. I took out my phone and pulled up Richard's contact. Make the call, Leo said quietly, before she owns him completely. I hit the dial button, it rang twice, then Richard's voice, calm and deep. Chloe, Richard, I need you to tell me what's going on. Now isn't a good time. I stopped walking on the sidewalk. Just listen to me. I know what Isabel told you. I know she showed you some fabricated invoice to make it look like I'm padding the budget, but it's a setup, Richard. She doctored it. Just like she doctored those expense receipts. Just like you've been doctoring this whole devoted husband charade. Chloe, that's quite enough. His tone was sharp as glass. I don't know what has gotten into you. If it's the pregnancy hormones, or if you and Leo are having some kind of issue, but you will not involve me in it. This isn't hormones, I shouted, my control snapping. Isabel is siphoning money from our accounts. She's been at it for months. She took this position to get to your fortune and now she's taking it. My lawyer just flagged a transaction. Leo cut in. A wire transfer, $150,000 from your joint capital account to a shell company in the Cayman Islands, authorized by you. Your digital key was used for the release. My blood ran cold. I never authorized that. It's timestamped November 10th, 2 days ago. The bank confirmed the funds are gone. November 10th, the day before Isabel called about my invoices. Leo, I did not sign off on that. Then explain how your credentials were on the authorization form. I remembered the tablet the night we celebrated the new baby. The pile of documents Richard said were just routine trust updates. He tricked me, I whispered, just like he did with the new apartment deposit. He had me approve a capital call on his tablet. I thought it was for a new art installation. Chloe, you need to listen to yourself. Leo's voice became formal, cold. You're alleging your husband stole $150,000 from you? Yes. And liquidated our shared investment portfolio? Yes. And mortgaged our home without your consent? Yes. I was practically screaming now. He used a forged authorization. He cleaned out our accounts. He has a ghost client on the books. His new partner is a known con artist. Her ex boyfriend is an assistant district attorney. He made her previous fraud charges disappear. Leo, I know how it sounds, but I am telling the truth. I can't be involved in this, Leo said flatly. Our firm's counsel is getting back to me in the morning. If you plan to pursue these claims, you will need to retain your own lawyer. But in the meantime, you are not to contact Richard. I've already sent him a text saying you're overwrought. I'm sorry, Chloe, I am, but the firm must be protected. The call ended. I stood on the pavement, the phone in my hand, feeling like a block of solid ice. Leo gently took it from me. She's already poisoned him against you. Yes, Isabel must have called him the second we hung up. Leo said she presented her own version of the accounts, fed him her own narrative. By the time you called, Richard had already chosen his side. It's Isabel's signature move. She isolates her victim, wins over their support system, and then destroys their credibility. When you finally cry for help, you just look unhinged. She's going to ruin us, I whispered, a deep hollow pain spreading through me. Leo nodded grimly. Not if we get to that ledger first. I dialed Richard's personal number again. It went directly to his voicemail. I left a rambling, desperate message, begging him to check the server activity, to run a trace on the digital key, to just speak with me. I knew it was pointless. We have to get into that building, I said. Now. The original incorporation documents are the only thing that proves the business was my idea from the start. That's too much of a risk, Leo answered. If Isabel is watching your finances, and you know she is, she'll anticipate a panicked move. So what do I do? My voice shook. I have nothing left, Leo. My own husband thinks I'm a criminal. You have the project files, Leo said, and tomorrow we expose them. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. Clara, I believe you. Meet me at the Presidio site at 10. I found something. Maya. I stared at the message. Who's Maya? Leo asked. The new junior architect, I said. She handles the renderings, works with the interns. She's only been here a year. Can you trust her? I thought about Maya. Ambitious, sharp, always catching details others missed. I don't know, but she's the only ally I might have left. Leo's face was tense. This smells like a setup, or she's genuinely trying to help, but why risk her career? Maybe she saw an alteration in the blueprints, or overheard Isabel. Leo was doubtful. Or Isabel is using her to lure you out. I looked at the text again. 10 p.m. That was in 15 minutes. I have to go, I said. It's my only shot. Then I'm coming with you. I shook my head. No, if it's a trap, one of us has to stay out of it. You're the only one who knows the whole story. Leo's jaw was set, but he gave a sharp nod. I'll be parked on the next block. If you're not out in 20 minutes, I'm calling the police. He handed me a small, powerful flashlight. The drive to the construction site was filled with a heavy silence. Leo pulled up a street away. I got out and walked down the dark, unfinished road. The skeletal frame of the building loomed against the foggy skyline. It was completely silent. I used my old site access card. Isabel hadn't thought to revoke that yet. The interior was pitch black. The only light was a faint green glow from a security panel. Maya, I whispered. Nothing. I walked further in, past stacks of materials, and towards the temporary site office at the back of the ground floor. The door was ajar, a slice of light cutting the darkness. Maya was at a folding table, a blueprint unrolled before her. She was a young woman with a sharp bob, her face pale with fear. Clara, she whispered, her voice tight. Thank God you came. Ethan's chief counsel, a woman named Isabel, cornered me at a fundraiser. I heard him on a call with his investors, she said softly. He mentioned a shell company, account number 419. He said it was buried deep in the project budget. She pressed a folded napkin into my hand. That's the holding company's name. I thought you should know. Men like that shouldn't win. The password felt strange as I typed it. Leo's Tesla was parked at a scenic overlook, the city lights shimmering below. I was in. I showed him the tablet. What is it? He asked. The screen showed a hidden directory. His private server, the real estate ventures. The password was his mother's birthday, 80552. Leo was stunned. How did you possibly guess that? I overheard Ethan on a call with Isabel, I told him. He called his secret folders his matriarch files. Isabel must have seen me accessing the server when she stopped by my desk. When she came to the firm, I nodded. She was there this morning. Leo gripped the steering wheel. What was she doing there? My own hands tightened, finalizing my professional execution. That same morning, just 9 hours before, I had entered the downtown architecture firm before 9. My keycard worked. I was still reeling from our fight last night. The falsified ethics complaint, Leo's warning, the insultingly small buyout Ethan had offered me. I hadn't slept. I'd stayed in a sterile hotel near the airport, staring at a $20,000 check, trying to figure out my next step. By morning, I was ready to show the partners the real project ledgers, the rerouted payments, Isabel's entire scheme. But as the elevator doors opened, I knew something was wrong. The conference room lights were on. I heard low voices, too many for a Thursday morning. I moved toward the sound. A half dozen senior partners and designers were there, even the new intern. Ethan was on the main monitor, his expression grim, and standing beside the screen, radiating an unnerving calm in a tailored gray suit, was Isabel Vance. She looked at me as I walked in, her face a perfect mask. Miss Hayes, we were just discussing your project. I froze in the doorway. What's this about? Please, have a seat. I'd rather stand. Isabel's smile was a thin line. This is an emergency partnership review. As of this morning, the firm was made aware of significant structural failings in your Presidio Tower design. A cold dread filled my chest. What are you talking about? She pushed a document across the table. I didn't move. One of the junior partners, David, picked it up. His eyes widened, and he shot me a panicked look. That is a signed engineering report, Isabel said, for a $100,000 change order to substandard steel supports, rerouted to a supplier in Mexico dated last Friday. The order was placed from your workstation and approved with your digital signature. That's impossible, I said, my voice a bare whisper. I never approved that order. The supplier has confirmed the order's authenticity, Isabel said, her voice cutting through the silence. Mr. Sterling contacted me in my capacity as his chief counsel. With this clear evidence of professional malpractice, I've been asked to manage the fallout. I looked at Ethan on the screen, but his eyes were fixed on the table. Ethan, I begged, you know this is a lie. You know I wouldn't do this. Clara, his voice was empty. I've seen the paperwork. I've spoken with the lawyers. The liability is real. She faked my signature. Effective immediately, Isabel's voice sliced in, sharp and final. Clara Hayes is removed from her position as senior architect for gross negligence. Her network credentials are revoked. Her license will be reported for review. Security will see you out. The room was utterly still. I saw the faces of my team. David looked away. No one would meet my eye. Not the architects I'd mentored, not the engineers I'd worked with for a decade. They adjusted their glasses and shuffled papers, looking anywhere but at me. You can't, I whispered to the screen. It's what the business requires, Ethan said, his voice distant. A process server I didn't know was waiting in the lobby of our penthouse on Russian Hill, holding an envelope. For Isabel Vance, he said, looking confused. Ethan met my gaze then, his expression one of pure cold dismissal. I'm sorry, Clara, the family's assets have to be protected. The server cleared his throat. Ma'am? I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash the porcelain vase on the console, to make Ethan see what his lawyer Isabel was doing. But the housekeeper was there watching. They would all tell the same story, how Clara Hayes finally cracked, how she became erratic, how Ethan had no other choice. So I stayed silent. The server placed the envelope on the polished table. I picked up my clutch, my lucky drafting pencil, a small book of blueprints. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped the pencil. No one spoke. I rode the elevator down, the mirrored doors reflecting a life that was no longer mine. I walked out into a cool San Francisco evening, holding the pieces of my shattered career. A few people glanced at me. A man on his phone, a cable car clattering past. All of them unaware of my world ending. I reached the corner and had to brace myself against the building's cold granite just to breathe. Now, sitting in Leo's car 11 hours later, the memory was a fresh wound. He let her write you out of your own life, Leo said quietly. She had to have him do it, I replied. She needs me to look unstable. So when I try to expose her, I just look like the crazy vindictive wife he had to cut loose. Leo's hands were clenched on the wheel. She's trying to delete you, your name, your reputation, your entire future. And she is succeeding. He put the car in drive. We drove in silence for a few minutes, heading south along the water. I rested my head against the cool glass, watching the bay lights blur together. Then my stomach twisted. It wasn't just fear or stress, it was something physical. A sudden, powerful wave of sickness that made me gasp. Pull over, I choked out. Leo swerved to the curb. I barely got the door open before I stumbled to the edge of the sidewalk and was sick. Again and again until I was shaking. I leaned against a cold brick wall, breathing in ragged gulps, and saw a warped reflection of myself in the dark window of a closed shop. Pale, with dark circles under my eyes, my hair a mess. I looked like a stranger. And then I knew. 6 weeks. I was 6 weeks late. I had been so consumed by the war with Ethan and Isabel, the frozen accounts, the fight for my name, that it had completely slipped my mind. My hand went to my stomach. Oh no, not this. This wasn't right. A hand touched my arm. Chloe? Ben's voice was tight. Are you okay? I pulled myself together, buttoning my coat against the chilly Boston air. Fine, just a lot. I breathed out and got back in his sedan. Ben studied me, his expression laced with doubt. You don't look fine. I'll get there, I promised, more to myself than to him. We merged into the traffic on Beacon Street. I sat perfectly still, my hand hovering over my stomach as a sickening certainty settled deep inside me. Tomorrow I'd call a lawyer. Tomorrow the real fight would begin. But right now, all I could think was that I might be pregnant with the child of a man who was letting his head of acquisitions tear my world apart. We drove on. Ben kept giving me anxious glances. I stared out at the dark reflection of the public garden pond. After a few blocks, I finally spoke. Can we stop at a pharmacy? Ben's head snapped toward me. Right now, please. He didn't ask why, just turned onto Charles Street and pulled up to an all-night pharmacy. The fluorescent lights inside were brutal, stripping the color from everything. I'll be right out here, Ben said. I managed a small nod and went inside. The automatic doors hissed open. The store was nearly empty, save for a cashier scrolling on his phone and someone buying allergy medicine. I moved past the aisles of souvenirs and snacks, heading for the personal health section. The pregnancy tests were shelved by the vitamins. I grabbed two different brands, needing undeniable confirmation, and went to the register. The cashier scanned them without looking up. 38.50, he mumbled. I used a debit card from my personal account. The restroom was located down a dim, narrow hall. Inside, the single light fixture buzzed loudly over the stall. The latch on the door was busted. My hand shook as I opened the first package. The instructions were clinically simple. Hold for 5 seconds, wait 3 minutes. A single line meant no. Two lines meant yes. I followed the steps. I laid the plastic wand on the edge of the sink and started a timer on my phone. 180 seconds. While it counted down, I caught my reflection. I looked shattered. My hair was a mess. My eyes were red and puffy, and my face was ashen. I looked like a woman who had just watched her life burn down, because I had. But if two lines showed up, my life wasn't just burned down. It was now chained to Liam and his corrupt real estate empire. I tried to remember my last cycle, late April maybe. Between consulting on the Copley project and managing donor expectations, lost in the illusion of a happy marriage, I hadn't paid attention. Then the floor fell out, the bitter accusations, Ava's scheming, and I was just trying to breathe. I was more than 2 weeks late, maybe 3. My phone chimed. I glanced at the test, two solid pink lines. I stared at them, praying it was a mistake. But they were unmistakable. They were not fading, they were a devastating final truth. Pregnant, maybe 6 or 7 weeks, that would have been our trip to Nantucket. The same trip Liam promised my historical preservation fund was secure. The same trip his acquisitions lead, Ava, called him at all hours. I had been carrying his baby for almost 2 months, completely unaware. My legs gave out. I slid to the cold tile floor, clutching the test, and just fell apart. Not quite tears, but harsh, guttural sobs that echoed in the tiny room. This was Liam's child, the baby of a man who was letting his business partner systematically ruin my professional credibility. A woman who wanted my husband, my home, my life. And now she could have this too. If they knew they would use it, they'd sue for custody, paint me as an unstable wreck, and hold me hostage for the next 18 years. Even worse, Ova would see this child as just another line item in a deal, a future heir to the sterling fortune that she would have to control or discard. I considered options I never dreamed I would face. Ending it, adoption, disappearing to start a new life. But my heart seized at the thought. This child, this tiny being, didn't choose Liam for a father. It didn't choose any of this, and neither did I. I rested a hand on my still flat belly. I'm sorry, I whispered to it. I am so, so sorry this is your story. But I refused to let Ava destroy us. Not us. If I was going to have a baby in the middle of this war, I would fight for a life free of its father's poisonous legacy. I pushed myself up, dried my face, and looked in the mirror. I didn't see a victim anymore. I saw a mother. I put the test in my bag and walked out of the pharmacy. Ben was leaning against his car across the street. He saw me, and his expression hardened with concern. I walked over to him, my voice trembling. He just waited. Ben, I said, I'm pregnant. A heavy silence fell between us on the quiet street. I watched his face morph from pure shock to a cold, calculated fear. Does Liam know? He asked, his voice low. No, and he can't, I replied. Ben's tone became urgent. If he finds out, he'll turn it into a weapon. He'll use his lawyers to bury you in motions, claim you're emotionally unstable, and then he'll take the child. Or worse, he'll see the baby as a liability and accelerate his exit strategy. You think he'd actually hurt me? He's financially ruined people for less, Ben said. And if something unfortunate were to happen to you, he's the grieving husband who inherits it all. The baby just becomes a tragic footnote. A deep coldness spread through my veins. Then he is never finding out, I stated, not until he's in jail. Ben held my gaze. So what's our move? I'm keeping this baby, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. This child will know Its father was a criminal, but that they were wanted and loved and will never have to be part of his world. A hint of admiration crossed Ben's face. Your father would be so proud of you. My throat tightened. I hope so. Ben stood up straight. We can't afford to wait to protect you both. We need undeniable proof. We have to get it tonight. Tonight, I echoed. I thought his financials were a fortress. They were, Ben said, before he kicked you out, before Ava started her character assassination. And before this, he glanced toward my stomach. The longer we wait, the more risk there is that Liam finds out you're still in Boston, tracks you down, and silences you for good. We go now. I met his eyes. Can we really do this? No, Ben said simply, but we're out of other options. I took the spare house key from my wallet. The brownstone, the safe in his study, the code is 826. All right, I whispered. Let's go. We got in his car. Ben started the engine and drove off, heading back toward the city center. The Boston skyline rose before us, a collection of brick and steel. Inside one of those buildings, in a custom-built safe in my own home, was the evidence I needed. The ledgers for the offshore accounts, the fraudulent loan documents, the files on two city inspectors who suddenly retired. I put a hand on my belly. We're going to end this, I whispered. I swear. Ben didn't answer, he just drove faster. By midnight, we were in his small, neat office. A single desk lamp illuminated the space. His office overlooked the financial district, a different universe from Liam's historic home. Tonight, it was our war room. Ben pulled a secured hard drive from a locked drawer, its casing worn from years of use. I set up the accounting structure for Liam's first company 5 years ago, he said quietly. He was the best forensic accountant in the city. He never thought I'd remember the loopholes. He brought up a complex flowchart of shell corporations. A small account pulsed on the diagram. He zoomed in on the study's expenses, encrypted ledgers, hidden transaction logs, the ghost of a slush fund. Ben examined the chart, his expression grim as he found a weakness. He saw an opening. A direct assault would trigger every alert. We had to piggyback through an unsecured vendor payment for the renovation, one shell company, then another. The accounting software was an older version he recognized. He traced the path of the money with a focus that was both methodical and intense. 4, 5. Ben stopped at the final encrypted folder, his fingers hovering over the mouse. Nothing. He clicked on the properties. The digital trail beyond it was dead, except for one encrypted data file. Monitors around him displayed streams of financial data, the blue numbers reflecting in his glasses. Offshore accounts here, laundered funds there, the entire architecture of my husband's real estate empire. Ben pointed at the main screen. A single file was highlighted in red. He's got a decoy ledger, he murmured. Completely off the books. I had to cross-reference the original incorporation papers to even find it. We navigated the virtual file structure, the sound of his clicking loud in the quiet office. My heart was pounding. Every move was a gamble. A file labeled Project North Star was the last obstacle. A lock icon blinked beside it. Ben cracked his knuckles over the keyboard and began his work. A moment later, a password box appeared. Inside that file was the record of Liam's very first fraudulent deal. A wood-paneled study, the window overlooking the Boston Public Garden. Ben was scrolling through cloud photos on his encrypted laptop. Open the safe, she whispered. He looked at the screen. Liam at fundraising dinners, Liam at a groundbreaking for a new luxury condo. But one photo made him pause. A small silver box on the desk, a gift from her father, a keepsake box engraved with a line from a poem. Chloe leaned in as Ben zoomed in. Below the engraving, almost invisible, was a sequence of numbers, a recovery code. Ben typed it in, and the safe's digital interface activated. It showed 8 blank spaces. What is it? I asked. The security question is our foundation, Ben said, but your anniversary isn't working. He typed in their wedding date. The screen flashed red. Denied. The day he proposed, Ben tried. He made such a big deal out of it. He entered the new date. Red again. Denied. The day he met my dad, I said. That deal was what started everything. Or, Ben said, pulling up the state's business registry, We could try the date that really matters to him. He glanced at me and I knew. I typed our anniversary 1208, the server partition unlocked. A stark list of files appeared. The contents were few but devastating. Leo pointed to an encrypted archive and a project folder. The folder was labeled with code names: Project Skyline, River North Tower, WPG. Then a single file with a chillingly simple name: Sophia to 2023. A separate container was marked Legacy Fund. Leo's fingers flew across the keyboard. He launched a decryption tool on the archive and mirrored the project folder to his secure drive. Next came the subfolders, then the chat logs. What is all this? I whispered. I don't know, Leo muttered, but Ethan wouldn't use this level of encryption for his public portfolio. He initiated the data transfer and checked his phone. 10:04 p.m. His awards dinner ends in an hour, Leo said. We have maybe 20 minutes before he's walking through that door. At the moment, a message lit up Ethan's synced desktop, a notification from his calendar. Depart for home. He was on his way. What now? We move faster. Leo ran a quick copy script, masking the process under a system scan. Stay calm, he whispered. We stared at the green progress bar inching across the screen. Ethan was just a few miles away. He was close enough now that we could hear the city traffic on our street. We were ready to scrub our tracks. My heart was a drum against my ribs. A cold dread settled in my stomach. I rested a hand on my belly, an instinct to protect the baby I had to save from this man. Ethan's headlights swept across the window, the transfer completed. Leo ejected the drive. We were out. He cleared the access logs and closed the server window, the program vanishing just as we heard his key in the front door. We slipped out of the office. He was home. A heavy, awful silence descended on the foyer. We retreated to the guest suite. Leo exhaled slowly. Let's see what we got. He connected the copied drive to his laptop, then killed the Wi-Fi connection, creating a digital island. The screen's glow was the only light in the dark room. I collapsed into an armchair, my body shaking. We have everything, I breathed out. Leo was silent, his eyes fixed on the display. He opened the first decrypted file. A meticulously organized spreadsheet appeared, its neat columns illuminating his face. And there in the top row was a name that stole the air from my lungs: Bridgeport Development 2018, permit fraud, asset leverage, $41 million. He killed the keyboard backlight. The city lights outside seemed miles away, leaving only the screen's cold glare. 11:30 p.m. He started decoding the chat logs. The spreadsheets came first, filled with ruin, the playbook of a corporate predator. Leo kept the main ledger visible. I leaned in as he highlighted the first entry. The notes were precise, clinical. At the top, Bridgeport Development. Below it, the cruel strategy. Year 2018, method structural sabotage, insurance claims, assets acquired for $41 million. Finalized August 10th, 2018. Leo's hand was a fist as he scrolled. Mercer Arts Group. Year 2019. Method counterfeit sourcing, reputation ruin. Assets seized for $62 million. Dissolved October 2nd, 2019. Another Galloway Shipping, year 2020. Supply chain manipulation, forced bankruptcy, $58 million. The federal case was mysteriously dropped. January 5th, 2020. Leo kept going. His voice was a low rumble as he read the names of the firms Ethan had destroyed. Oakwood Designs, 2019. An intellectual property theft worth $73 million. Viridian Logistics, 2020. A union bus that crippled them for $90 million. Atlas Holdings, 2021. A hostile takeover that cost them $85 million. A wave of nausea hit me. Each name was a colleague I knew. A business run by friends. People who saw a partner in Ethan just like I had. People who signed deals on a handshake, who believed in his vision, who lost it all thinking it was just bad luck. Leo scrolled. Claremont Group. My blood turned to ice. Year 2022. Method spousal access, leveraged assets, $120 million stolen from my family's company. The inquiry was stonewalled. May 20th, 2022. Leo looked at our family's name on the screen. His jaw was set like stone. His finger paused over the mouse. Claire, I'm so sorry, he said, his voice cracking. He didn't wait for my answer, just clicked the next entry. Sterling Hospitality, year 2023. Method corporate espionage, character assassination. Assets liquidated for $115 million. The deal closed July 14th, 2023. The lawsuit was dismissed. August 3rd, 2023. 7 companies, 5 years, over $600 million. Leo opened a different file from the archive. It contained a single legal document drafted in that same chillingly neat font, the Claremont Family Endowment, activated upon birth of first heir, $850 million. Claremont Industries Board Control, $200 million. Total value over $1 billion. Transfer scheduled for December 5th, 2024. I stared at the screen. My due date, December 5th, was my due date. My hand flew to my stomach. A child. If I had a son, Ethan would gain absolute control through our marriage and his rights as the father. The endowment, the company, everything my family built would become his. And my family would be destroyed. You were the final acquisition, Leo said, his voice a whisper. The masterpiece. I couldn't form words. Leo closed the file and opened a folder of archived emails. He pulled up a chain between Ethan and Sophia. A year of messages, each one a brick in their conspiracy. He showed me the first. I didn't want to see it, but I was frozen. It was a message from Ethan instructing my family's own lawyer on how to structure the prenup with loopholes he could exploit. The email was sent from our home network. It was so calculated, so vicious. He wasn't just planning a scheme, he was weaponizing our own people against us. Claremont Group, Leo said, his voice laced with venom. He clicked to another message, an attachment. The owner of Sterling Hospitality, a woman my father mentored, looking shattered as Ethan signed the papers to absorb her life's work. Sterling, Leo said. He showed me email after email. Each one was a new betrayal. Each one showed a good person being systematically broken. When he reached the last exchange, he stopped. It was from 3 weeks ago. It was from Sophia. Ethan needs to remember his promises. This is my guarantee. It was her own leverage. If he tried to cut her out, she would burn him to the ground. I stared at her text. She was controlling him. Blackmail, Leo confirmed against Ethan. If he ever crossed her, she had the proof that he was the architect of it all. She's been his partner for years. This is monstrous. This is Sophia. Leo's face was pale. She was never just his employee. She owns him. He copied the email chains to the secure drive, his fingers shaking. He then pulled up records of Ethan's hidden accounts and shell corporations. He arranged them on the screen. This is everything, he said. The transfers, the emails, the internal memos he buried. It's more than enough to send them both to prison for the rest of their lives. Then why do you look so terrified? Leo opened one last folder from the archive that I hadn't noticed. It was labeled with that same cold, precise text. See contingency. He clicked it. A single document loaded. A confirmed reservation for a private suite at a discreet medical clinic scheduled for tonight, October 10th, 2024. For me. The file was named the Penthouse Protocol. I moved closer. Ethan shifted the laptop screen slightly away. Item 1, Foundation Gala, 7 to 9 p.m. at the Art Institute. Solidify the devoted couple image. Key donors will be in attendance. Item 2, Incapacitation, 8:45 p.m. Zaleplon, 10 milligrams supplied by A. The lead bartender will serve the custom champagne cocktail. Item 3, Transport, 10:30 p.m. Subject disoriented. Return to the penthouse on Lakeshore Drive. Item 4, Resolution, 11:15 p.m. Assist subject onto the balcony, a 400-foot drop, a sudden dizzy spell, no signs of struggle. Item 5, Alert, morning, October 12th. It reports subject missing after a restless night. Search begins. Body discovered on the lower terrace, deemed a tragic accident. due to pregnancy related fainting. I couldn't breathe. They're going to kill me tonight, I choked out. Leo's face was grim. We have less than 10 hours. So what do we do? Leo pointed to the initial on the plan. A, he said, Ethan's cousin. Alistair, he's the chief of medicine at Chicago General Hospital. She's the strategist behind it all. I thought about the servers crashing at my father's foundation gala, the chaos, and Nathan slipping me a burner phone while Leo was berating the event staff. That's why you told me to stop using the family cloud, I realized. You knew. Nathan gave a grim nod. I've had a flag on Leo's private servers for a month. I pulled the data stream. I saw the entire playbook. But I left the gala early. You did, Nathan confirmed, which means they're moving to the backup plan. What's the backup plan? Nathan showed me the next document. The same cold corporate language filled the screen. Phase 2. If primary objective is aborted, initiate reputation leverage. Deploy fabricated stories of emotional distress. Use judicial contacts to expedite a conservatorship hearing. Compel a mental health evaluation. The Meadowlark Pines retreat. Intercept during transport or at the facility. Frame as postpartum psychosis. My stomach turned to ice. They're going to paint me as an unstable mother, I whispered. Or have you put away, Nathan said. It's the same strategy Diana used on his last business partner. I looked at the doctored financial reports, the selectively edited voice notes, the whole venomous plan. What are we supposed to do? I asked. Nathan closed the laptop. We expose every single detail, he said, before they can write our ending. Hold on, let me show you the project file. Yes, they had a whole campaign to erase me. Type betrayal to see the specifics. A trigger warning, this is a fictional account for awareness. If this gets too intense, please feel free to scroll. But if you're still here, you'll see how manipulators work. Nathan didn't shut down the computer. He stared at the screen, his face ashen. Let me see it again, I said. I need to understand everything. He turned the laptop back to me. The Nightingale Initiative. Date, November 3rd, 2024. Phase 1, charity auction, 8 to 10 p.m. The Peninsula Hotel. Establish public narrative. Target must be seen interacting with Elle in a public space. At least 5 influential guests must witness it. Phase 2, compromise, 9:30 p.m. Asset D, Diana Sterling, will direct the bartender to prepare a calming herbal infusion. Zopiclone, 7.5 milligrams, dissolved within. Target will show effects in 20 minutes. Confusion, poor coordination, memory gaps. Elle will escort the target to their car, telling guests she's overwhelmed by the pregnancy. Phase 3, isolation, 11 to 11:30 p.m. Drive to the Sterling Lake House in Lake Geneva. Private shoreline access. GPS coordinates 42.5956 degrees north, 88.4342 degrees west. No household staff present. Zero road traffic after dark. Phase 4, staging 11:30 to midnight. Walk target along the private pier to the seating area. Pier length 150 feet. Target will be drowsy and suggestible. Position target near the unguarded edge. Phase 5, execution 12:15 a.m. Induce a fall from the pier. A 12-foot drop into freezing water. Make sure the scene looks natural. No signs of force, no visible injuries. Zopiclone is extremely difficult to trace in a standard toxicology screening after 12 hours. A coroner's report will most likely be inconclusive. Phase 6, aftermath, morning, November 4th. Elle will report the target missing at 10 a.m. A private search team will be dispatched by noon. The body will be found by 4 p.m. The medical examiner, a close friend of Diana's, will rule the death an accidental drowning due to a sudden dizzy spell. The investigation will be closed within days. I couldn't move. They scripted your death down to the minute, Nathan said, his voice strained. Diana was going to have you sedated. Leo would have walked you down that pier while you were barely conscious, and then he would have let you fall and called it a tragedy. But I left, I said. I felt woozy around 9:45. I told him I had to go home. Nathan nodded. That woozy feeling saved your life. By the time Leo realized you were gone, phase two was a bust. He couldn't drug you, he couldn't get you to the lake house. Was that your doing? I asked. Did you switch the drink? Nathan just held my gaze. It's irrelevant now, he said. What's important is that their first plan failed. So they launched phase two. He opened the next file. Phase two contingency. Activated November 3rd, 2024, 10:30 p.m. Target has evaded phase one. Alternative reputation strategy now active. Step 1, discredit and marginalize. Step 1, narrative seeding. Use my sister, Diana Sterling, to spread rumors of Clara's erratic behavior within our circle. Step 2, asset seizure. Propose a new family trust, allegedly to secure our child's future, with a clause granting me total control of her family's art collection. Get her to sign. Step 3, manufacture a crisis. Secretly record emotional outbursts, then edit them to create a portrait of a mental breakdown. Bribe two junior curators to give statements about her unprofessionalism for a family court petition. Step 4, execute. File for conservatorship, citing severe prenatal depression. Use our contact in the judiciary to ensure it is granted. The objective, brand her as an unfit guardian to gain sole custody. Step 5, consolidation. With Clara institutionalized, all marital assets and the art collection fall under my control. Time frame 60 days. Estimated worth $45.5 million. I couldn't breathe. He's going to make everyone think I'm insane, I said, my voice shaking. He's going to take my baby. Nathan gestured to the screen. This is a corporate takeover of your life, Clara, and Diana is the architect. She's a monster, I whispered, the words blurring. This is how she plans to destroy me. She orchestrated a nearly identical buyout against Leo's first major gallery partner. Nathan said grimly, "We're not going to let that happen to you." I saw the cold, calculated strategy, a business plan for my own ruin. There's something else, Nathan said quietly, clicking on a new folder. A series of encrypted messages between Diana and a headhunter. The next folder was titled The Serafina Project Phase 2. He opened it. A dossier appeared. Serafina Dubois, age 28. Profession emerging artist. Net worth $90,000. Primary assets: a collection of unsold canvases, a studio in the West Loop, and significant art school debt. Status: single, recently cut off from family funding. Vulnerability: intense ambition, desperate for a wealthy patron. Timeline: first introduction scheduled for December 1st, 2024, less than a month after C's planned institutionalization. Below the profile was a draft of an email. Serafina, this is Leo Sterling. I was absolutely captivated by your piece at the graduate show tonight. As a patron of bold new talent, your work spoke to me on a profound level. I would be honored to acquire your entire collection and become your sole benefactor. Perhaps we could meet for a drink. No pressure, just a conversation about your future. Leo. A wave of nausea washed over me. He already has my replacement picked out, I choked out. 1 month, Nathan said, his tone sharp. 1 month. After they have you committed, he sends that email. Serafina will think she's met her savior. In 2 years, she'll be another liability to be managed. I looked at her hopeful face in the photo, standing proudly by a chaotic, brilliant painting, completely oblivious. She needs to be warned, I said. She will be, Nathan replied. But first we need to start a fire they can't put out. If Leo silences you, Diana will bury this. He'll walk away clean, and Serafina is next in line. So what's the plan? Nathan started gathering his equipment. We give everything to the press, tonight, before they realize we have it. How? There's a journalist at the Tribune, Nathan said. She specializes in the dark side of the art market, a complete bulldog. She keeps everything on air-gap drives. We give it all to her. If you show her these plans, the offshore art accounts, the whole scheme for Serafina, if you expose Leo and Diana to a real reporter, they won't be able to kill this story. The whole world will be watching. Leo will have his men on me the moment I walk outside. Not if the reporter comes to us, Nathan said. I have a source, Chloe Davies. She's been investigating Leo's acquisitions for a year. If I tell her we can prove he's a predator with the files, the accounts, everything, she'll come. She can get us to a safe location. A tiny flame of hope flickered inside me. Do you think she'll help us? She will when she sees this evidence. A sudden buzz from Nathan's phone made us both flinch. A silent alert from a tracker on his car. Nathan's face went white as he stared at the screen. We both looked down at the street. A man was standing by the entrance to our building. Impeccable suit, an earpiece. His gaze fixed on our apartment. Leo's head of security. He's watching us, Nathan mouthed. Stay still. The man brought his hand up to his ear. A man on the curb, my blood ran cold. He lifted a phone and aimed it at our window. I pulled back from the light. Nathan swore quietly. We're leaving. Now. He grabbed the keys to the service elevator. We took the back stairs to the garage. We drove for 3 blocks with the headlights off before turning onto Lakeshore Drive. The Tribune, I said. We go this afternoon and give them everything. Nathan agreed. 4 p.m. His gallery opening starts at the same time. You have to be ready. I held the encrypted drive. I had to finish this. I'm ready, I said. He accelerated into traffic. 1 block, then 2. I finally started to breathe. And then I saw 2 pairs of headlights flare in the rearview mirror. Nathan, there behind us, 2 black sedans, and they were closing in. The first car pulled up beside us. In the dim light of the dashboard, I saw the driver's face. It was Leo's security chief. The other town car boxed us in, cutting off the street. Leo cursed and slammed the brakes, but we were stuck. The sedan skidded. A man in a dark suit tapped on the glass. Stay in the car, Leo said, his hand reaching for his phone. My door was pulled open. A gloved hand grabbed my wrist. I struggled, but a sharp pain shot up my arm as it was twisted behind me. Let her go, a woman said calmly. Not my voice. It was Chloe. I was yanked from the car and pushed against the hood, the metal cold against my skin. 2 men held Leo back as they secured his hands. Chloe emerged from the first car. Her gaze was chilling. Chloe, please, I begged. I had to call him, she replied, her voice flat. You sent those threats, Amelia. There was no other way. Chloe displayed a phone. Your messages, the investigators' findings, it's all here. My husband Arthur appeared, dressed in a perfect custom suit. He offered a slight cold smile. Show her the rest, he said to Chloe. She swiped, then angled the phone at me. It displayed a court-ordered evaluation. For Amelia Vance, citing harassment. Then I saw the texts, my name and number sending vile things to Chloe. A transfer of $50,000 from our accounts to a private detective. My digital signature was flawlessly forged. That's fake, I stammered. Chloe, you know that isn't me. The metadata checks out, Chloe said. Because Arthur signs their paychecks, I shot back. He forged that, just like he forged the deeds to my father's properties. Chloe revealed another screen. A second mortgage on our home for $200,000 paid to her consulting firm. Filed on May 3rd, 2024 at 2:20 a.m. That needs my fingerprint, Arthur. I never approved that, I whispered. Your print was the final authorization, Amelia, Arthur said softly. The logs show it. 2:20 this morning. I was asleep. He must have pressed my finger to the screen while I slept beside him. He's lying, I pleaded. Arthur, he's liquidating the estate. Look at the shell companies. That's enough. Arthur's voice was like steel. He held up an external drive. Our drive. You should have been resting. He connected it to a tablet, opening a hidden folder. He showed the screen to Leo. Here's the proof, Leo, the payments to Chloe. The fraudulent sales, I yelled. Arthur opened a directory. Marcus Thorne, 2020, consulting fee $100,000. Leo looked confused. Arthur then dragged the entire folder to the trash and erased it. No, I cried, but a security man held me fast. Arthur opened another folder. Sarah Jenkins, deleted. That was my mother's nurse, I gasped. She died in 2020. He forced her out, Leo. He paid off her son to keep quiet. Arthur deleted that file too. The icon disappeared. Leo made a strangled noise. The guard shoved him slightly. Stop it, I screamed. Arthur closed the tablet, pocketing the drive. He turned to Leo. She accessed the firm's secure servers, Arthur said smoothly. She and your sister have been stealing client data. Her credentials are all over the logs. They show her and this man, he nodded at Leo, downloading blueprints after hours. That's theft of intellectual property. Leo looked from me to Arthur to the tablet. I don't get it, Leo mumbled. You don't need to, Arthur said. Legal is handling it. Where to? One of the men asked. Arthur glanced at his phone. I'm sending the address. A wellness clinic in Greenwich, Suite B, separate rooms. Our lawyers will release a statement. Wait, Leo's voice trembled. You're not calling the police? This requires discretion, Arthur said reasonably. We keep it contained. Control the narrative before it leaks. It's how we protect the family, Leo. Trust me, I know how to manage these situations. It's for the best. Leo hesitated, then nodded. I wanted to scream that Arthur was the danger, that there was no clinic, that we would be gone. But a hand was on my arm, leading me away. Leo's eyes met mine, full of apology. They put us in separate cars. A woman in medical scrubs sat beside me. The last thing I heard was Arthur. Thank you, Leo. I know this isn't easy. Just make sure she gets help, Leo said. She's been under so much stress. The door closed, the car pulled away. I don't know how long we drove. An hour, maybe. The air was antiseptic. My fists were clenched so tight they ached. My stomach twisted. The car stopped. A firm hand guided me out. Everything was a blur. I was walked into a sleek, quiet building. I heard a lock beep. A door opened, and I was gently pushed inside. The lock clicked shut behind me. I was in a Spartan room, maybe 10 by 10. White walls, a window looking out at dense woods, no phone, no television, just a bed and a profound quiet. The electronic lock hummed. I was trapped. I don't know how long I stood there. Time bled together. The sun dipped below the trees. An entire day passed. I sat on the bed, my hand on my belly, refusing to think about the baby, refusing to think about what lies Arthur was spinning or where Leo was. I refused to picture Chloe in her corner office, orchestrating my destruction. I thought of my grandmother. I was 16 when she died. I remembered her grit, her voice always steady. When they wall you in, she once said, look for the loose brick. Every wall has a flaw. I felt inside my coat lining. 6 a.m. They took my phone and purse, but they missed the small emergency kit I always carried. A silly little thing. Sewn inside was a tiny encrypted drive. Leo's old friend from the fraud department gave it to me. Just in case, he'd said. I had copied the original estate deeds before Arthur's lawyers had them updated. If he tries anything, you'll have the original record. I clutched the small device. It was cold, the truth, not the whole story, but a foundation. Chloe controlled the board and the servers, but this was physical. Official land records, proof that couldn't be explained away in a press conference. The silence was suffocating. I was in total darkness. The power was cut. I was completely alone and nobody knew where I was. Then, a soft buzz. My spare burner phone hidden in a secret pocket of my handbag. The screen lit up. A single bar of signal. A text on a secure app. Sent at 6:05 a.m., unknown number. I opened it. Amelia, it's Kevin, Arthur's former IT head. I'm sorry I helped him fake the server activity. I can't do this anymore. The real backups are on a cloud server. The password is AVG1995. The original architectural files are there. Arthur only erased the local network. See the transfer. The text came from my brother. My hands trembled as I read it. Then read it again. It showed a screenshot from their joint business account. Arthur, my husband, the man I cherished, the father of our baby. He was funneling funds from the design firm he shared with my brother, Jacob. And I knew its destination. Her, Victoria. His lead designer, his new project. The cloud drive Arthur used for our vacation photos held a subfolder, one I was never meant to find. It detailed a plan to have me declared unfit, to take our child. The door beeped and swung open. Morning sun poured into the penthouse, and I shielded my eyes. A figure stood in the doorway. Not Arthur, not his assistant. A woman I'd never seen. Young, puzzled. Ma'am? Her voice was soft. You're not meant to be in here. This suite is being prepared for a private medical consult. My vision cleared. A hotel employee? Maybe 20 years old, with a neat uniform and a tray of coffee. Not one of Arthur's people. She was unaware of his scheme. I'm so sorry, I said, my voice thin. I was just leaving. My husband booked the room. I must have mistaken the checkout time. The employee looked confused. Checkout? Ma'am, this suite is reserved for the next 3 days. I work for his wife, I lied. I was just dropping off a bag for tonight's charity dinner. The door must have latched behind me. She eyed my rumpled clothes and the panic in my face, but I just seemed like a stressed pregnant woman. You'll need to use the main doors, she said, her professional smile back in place. They open in 15 minutes. Of course. Thank you, I mumbled, slipping past her into the silent, deserted hall. The air in the lobby smelled of fresh flowers. I took a ragged breath. The employee watched me go, a flicker of doubt in her eyes, but she didn't raise an alarm. I reached the curb outside and checked my phone. 6:47 a.m. One bar of signal. I dialed Arthur. It went straight to his polished voicemail. I tried his direct line. No longer in service. A cold fear gripped me. He was getting ready for his award ceremony tonight, leaving me here to be handled. I called Jacob. He answered on the first ring. Olivia. He sounded panicked. Where are you? I've been calling all night. The Grand Hotel, I said. Can you get me? Are you okay? No, I whispered, but I will be if I leave now. Please hurry, I'm on my way. 3 minutes. I hung up and sank onto a cold marble bench as the shaking started. The sun glinted off the skyscrapers, casting long morning shadows. In some suite upstairs, Arthur was rehearsing his acceptance speech. Somewhere, Victoria was approving designs for their new future. Somewhere, his sister was telling friends how this pregnancy had made me so unstable. But I had the records, I had Jacob's text, and I had until 8 p.m. to expose them all. 9 hours to get the final proof, 9 hours to call my attorney, 9 hours to ensure that when I walked into that innovation summit, I could dismantle Liam Donovan and his meticulously crafted world. Mark's Tesla pulled up to the curb. He got out, his face tense and pale, and gave me a tight, desperate hug. What's the plan? He whispered into my hair. I held up my tablet, showing him the screenshot. It's all here. The wire transfers, the fake therapy invoices, everything. I need access to your venture firm's main server, and I need to be at that summit by 7. Mark pulled back, his investors' focus taking over. How will you do it? I'm going to tell our story, I said, in front of our family, our investors, and every major player in this city. Mark gave a short, firm nod. All right, let's go. We got into the car. He merged into traffic and sped toward his office in the seaport. I glanced at the tablet. 7:19 a.m. I had 11 hours and 41 minutes. The timing would be tight. The morning was a complete blur. By 7:45, Mark and I were in his stark modern office overlooking Boston Harbor. The tablet felt like a lead weight in my hands. I hadn't slept at all. My tablet's battery was at 7%. But I possessed the one thing Liam never anticipated, a complete history of his deceit, the wire transfers to Isabella's consulting firm, and his notes on how to prove my incompetence. The office was quiet. Mark's tech specialist, a young man named Ben, helped me connect to their network. I entered the server address. 40 gigabytes. The authentic investment decks, the original contracts, and the payment logs to Rossi Consulting, and 2 audio files. The first was a recording of me, manipulated to make me sound paranoid and unstable. The second was a conversation between Liam and the psychologist, coaching him on how to have me committed. His initials were on the project folder. LD50 copies, I said, on the best cardstock you have. Ben nodded. It will take about an hour. As the printer began to whir, I opened my own laptop and started to compose a message. Mark stood by the window, a guardian watching over the city. 2 emails, one to our father, one to the chairman of the summit steering committee. Subject: urgent information regarding Liam Donovan. Sent September 12th, 2024 at 8:51 a.m. Signed, Mark Sterling. My name is Chloe Donovan. I am the wife of Liam Donovan. My maiden name is Chloe Sterling, born May 3rd, 1990. His company is being honored this evening. Attached are two documents. One, the authentic prospectus for the new AI division. Two, a fabricated version concealing payments to an entity named Rossi Consulting. The discrepancies outline a scheme to embezzle over $3 million from his partnership with my brother, Mark Sterling. I also have evidence file LD 2024 117, which proves this entity is owned by Isabella Rossi. My husband is attempting to have me institutionalized based on manufactured medical reports. The summit keynote is scheduled for 7 p.m. at the Seaport Convention Center. Please review this information. Chloe Donovan. I attached the two prospectuses and sent these emails. A moment later, a response came. Re. Case file SCC 2024 9821 opened, forwarded to our internal governance board. We will contact you shortly. Mark put a hand on my arm. It's sent. They have it now. I let out a shaky breath. For the first time in a year, I felt like I wasn't losing my mind. At 9:30, as Ben handed me the stacks of documents, the sleek glass door to the office slid open. I went completely still. Mark's business partner, David, stood there, his suit rumpled. His face was pale, he looked utterly haunted. Chloe, he said, his voice cracking. Mark stepped between us. You backed him. What are you doing here? David held up his hands, looking defeated. Because I was wrong, and you're going to need this. He turned his tablet around, showing us a forwarded email. From Donovan Legal to Mr. Mark Sterling. Subject, Strategy for Managing Chloe's Prenatal Anxiety. Date, September 12th, 2024, 11:48 p.m. Dear Mr. Sterling, a notification showed a transfer of $250,000 was wired to an entity called Rossi Consulting, account 702419-B. Then 20% of my venture firm's shares, valued at $300,000, was moved to that same account at 11:55 p.m. on September 12th, 2024. Mark's voice was harsh. I never authorized that transfer. I never signed over my shares. Liam must have cloned my credentials and forged my digital signature, just as he did to you. I stared at the transaction. The same night Liam claimed he was in Zurich closing a deal, he'd siphoned $250,000 and a fifth of my brother's company into Isabella's Shell Corporation. I am so sorry, Chloe, Mark said. I believed his fabrications. I thought you had turned on me. But this morning, I saw the shared folder notification and checked the access logs. The story he told me was a complete lie. The international accounts, the internal audit, it was all a smokescreen. He turned us against each other. David looked from me to Mark. We have to do something, he said. My attorney is already working on getting your shares back, and I'm going with you to the summit. I took a deep breath and gave a small nod. We go together. By 2 p.m., Mark's lawyer, a sharp woman named Maria Flores, had secured a freeze on the assets. The 72-hour hold was stopped due to evidence of fraud and procedural violations. David walked out at 2:20 p.m., looking grim but resolute. Mark drove him straight to my apartment. At 4 o'clock, the three of us stood on the steps of the convention center. It was me, David, and my brother Mark. We had two encrypted drives, a tablet, and the cold, hard truth. David held one of the drives. It's all on here, he said. The money trails, the message logs, the entire plan. If we walk in there, this all goes public. I know, I answered. Mark handed me a small, unmarked flash drive. This has everything from my company server, he said. It proves he forged my signature to move the equity. It's over, Chloe. It's finally over. Damning emails, hotel bills, a secret crypto wallet. Everything was on it. My phone buzzed. It was a message from my brother Mark. Text, got the server data. Headed to the summit hall. Don't start the presentation without me. M. I showed the text to my sister-in-law, who gave a short, determined nod. He is on his way, she whispered. My husband's sister, Megan, checked her watch. The main keynote would start in 1 hour. I surveyed the sleek Boston Summit Hall, its walls covered with corporate logos. This was the Donovan family's kingdom, where my husband Liam was revered as a king. Tonight, I was pulling the plug on his entire operation. We went inside. At 7 p.m. sharp, the annual Donovan Innovation Summit was underway. The hall was filled with Boston's tech elite, about 50 people gathering near the main stage. Megan, in a stylish designer suit, commanded the room like a CEO. A projection over the stage read Donovan Dynamics, Building Tomorrow on a Foundation of Trust, 2024. At a front table, Liam sat with a self assured smirk, a man convinced of his own brilliance. I stood near the entrance with Mark's wife. The tablet in my purse felt like a ticking bomb. My hands were moist. Megan's voice came through the speakers. That is because our family values progress, privacy, and absolute transparency above all else. Some of the older investors nodded with approval. Mark's wife gave me a nudge. Wait for her to begin the award ceremony. I agreed. At 7:40, Megan smiled. And now, before we announce the winner, I want to say a few words. I didn't wait for her permission. I simply stood up and walked to the stage. The quiet chatter died down as every eye turned to me. Megan's smile faltered. I reached the large projection screen used for the presentations. Her aide tried to stop me, but I was faster. I connected the tablet to the system before he could protest. I have a statement to make, I said, my voice cutting through the now total silence. How many secrets has your boy genius hidden to build his perfect empire? A collective gasp went through the crowd. Megan stood up, her face a rigid mask of anger. Please remove this woman from the premises. But I was already clicking, and the first piece of proof flashed onto the screen behind her. I opened the folder. The first slide, a casual photo of Liam with his lead engineer at a mountain resort, appeared 10 feet tall. Subject, Our Little Project 2023. A failed app startup, $250,000. A low murmur moved through the guests. Smartphones started to come out, their cameras now on. I went to the next slide. Next was Isabella Rossi in 2011. An abrupt business failure, $410,000. I clicked one more time. Then came Maria Flores, 2015. An unforeseen bankruptcy for $350,000. Megan's voice was like ice. This is slander, complete fiction. My brother's wife is obviously having an episode. I locked eyes with her. Then, maybe this will add some clarity. I changed to the investments folder. 9 headshots appeared on the screen. Each was a different woman, young and bright. Below each picture was her name and a year. Chloe Cole, Isabella Rossi, Maria Flores, Brenda Coffey, Diana Petrova, Hannah Moss, Claire Delaney, Natalie Fletcher, and one last photo. The label just said CS, with the date pending. It was a picture he had taken of me relaxing on our sailboat in the harbor last summer. It was a quiet afternoon, one I barely recall. I had no idea he was watching. I never saw that I was his next conquest. The nursery was silent, then pierced by a single chilling notification. Disbelief and dread filled the room. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, swept into the room. She snatched the tablet from my sister's hand, her voice dripping with condescension. That is a fabrication, she sneered, gesturing at the photo of Julian with another woman, a nobody. He was entertaining a client's daughter in May of 2023. Just over 6 months ago, he secured that deal. It was a business dinner. He destroyed his last partner to get that contract, just like he will for us. And Clara Reed was the key to it all. A woman standing by the door started to weep silently. Maya pointed a finger at my mother-in-law. This woman is a known manipulator. She has a history of gaslighting and control. Nothing she claims is true. My brother Ben came forward, holding out a file to a man from his law firm. This should be clear enough, Ben said. Julian Davenport wired over $250,000 from their joint account 3 days ago using a shell corporation. The entire paper trail is right here. The lawyer's eyes widened as he scanned the documents. Eleanor hissed at the household staff. Get these people out of my son's house. But before they could move, the front door opened. Four men in dark suits entered, their firm's insignia on their lapels. Their leader, a calm man with a steady gaze, spoke with precision. I'm Mr. Harris from Chen and Associates, his voice cutting through the tension. Julian and Eleanor Davenport, you are both being served with a court order to freeze all marital assets pending a fraud investigation. You have the right to contact your attorney. The grand foyer descended into chaos. Staff were whispering, sneaking glances at the scene. The lawyers advanced toward the study. Eleanor's face went pale. She steadied herself against a marble column, but Julian seemed unfazed. He stood, walked to the fireplace, and picked up a heavy iron poker. The metal was cold under the chandelier lights. Don't come any closer, he warned, his gaze locked on me. He motioned to a nearby armchair. Sit. The air was thick with menace. My brother Ben stepped up, creating a physical shield between Julian and me. A cruel smirk played on Julian's lips. You should have stayed oblivious, Clara. He took a menacing step in my direction. Ben moved instantly to intercept him. You will not touch her. Two of Ben's partners came in from the entryway. One stood squarely in Julian's path, while the other secured the back door. Julian froze, seeing he was trapped. His mother, Eleanor, a powerful board member, slammed her phone down on a glass table. In an instant, our tense family dinner had become a legal standoff. Julian didn't fight back, he just vibrated with rage. Eleanor tried to make a run for her office. She grabbed her briefcase, her heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floor. Ben's colleague, Aisha, blocked her path. I don't think there's an escape route planned for this, she said evenly. Eleanor froze, her mask of superiority finally shattering. The household staff stood motionless, their faces a blend of fear and shock. Their phones were hidden, but their eyes recorded everything. Maya held an iPad in the air, its screen glowing. For the record, she announced, her voice echoing in the silent living room. For the past 90 days, my sister has employed a digital forensics team. As of tonight, we have irrefutable proof of Julian's infidelity and a plot to hide marital assets. She swiped the screen, showing an image of Julian kissing a young brunette. Thanks to his own carelessness, she said, nodding toward my husband. We have everything needed for a divorce, citing adultery and conspiracy to commit fraud, with his mother as a key player. The silence was absolute. I felt weak, my legs about to give out. Maya's hand on my arm was all that kept me upright. Julian's mother let out a strangled cry. His father stood like a statue, staring at his son with utter contempt. At 7:30, a man from the catering staff stepped out of the kitchen. He was young, in his early 20s, his face pale with stress. My name is Leo Flores, he stammered, his voice trembling. I work at the club. I was forced to sign a non-disclosure agreement back in 2021. I saw him with her constantly, and I'm ready to say so in court. A fresh round of gasps filled the air. Eleanor glared at him with pure loathing, but Leo held his ground. He looked straight at me. I'm very sorry. I first saw Julian ruin a man's career in 2016. His family always cleans up his messes. They threatened my job, but I can't stay quiet anymore. Maya nodded. Our attorneys will contact you. Your statement will be submitted to the court. As the legal team began to leave around 10 p.m., a young woman approached me. She was a designer, maybe 26, wearing a simple gray dress. Her eyes were swollen as she paused before me. You must be Clara, she said quietly. My name is Anya. I received a strange call from a blocked number about an hour ago. It said I was about to be named as his mistress. She took a shaky breath. Julian swore he would be my patron. I almost believed him. Her hand shook as she pointed to the diamond bracelet on her wrist. He gave me this last night, she whispered. He said it was a token of his commitment. My heart stopped. That bracelet was my grandmother's. 4 months later, in October of 2024, I stood on the balcony of my new home, my hands cradling my 5-month pregnant belly. The baby kicked. Maya had been living with me since August, helping me navigate the legal storm and prepare for the baby. She made sure I ate and rested. We never replayed that night. We were focused on what came next. Julian's architectural firm was the focus of a state fraud investigation. The media called his actions a textbook case of narcissistic abuse. Eleanor's seat on the charity board was rescinded. Leo Flores' testimony was a key part of the divorce proceedings. He sent me a brief note of solidarity. I hadn't found the words to reply. Maya created a foundation to offer digital security services to abuse survivors, calling it the Anya Initiative. My lawyer, Miss Chen, closed the file outlining the asset freeze. We'd identified nearly $3 million Julian had diverted to secret accounts, and the fight to reclaim it had begun. This was only the first step. On October the 12th, 2024, the Reed Foundation was officially chartered. My sister Maya was its president, supported by my closest friends. Our mission to offer women a safe harbor from these exact kinds of betrayals. I felt the baby kick again, a strong pulse against my hand. I used to fear I couldn't love a child born from such pain. I doubted myself. But this baby wasn't his story, she was mine. Proof of my strength to endure. She was our new beginning. This child was my Grace, and so Grace is what I would call her, Grace Maya Reed. Maya came out, setting a warm cup of tea beside me. Her eyes were kind. Dad would be so incredibly proud of you, she whispered. I offered a small smile. I think he'd be proud of us both. The Chicago skyline before us was a sea of glittering lights. My phone lit up with a text from a friend. Asterisk dinner next week. I have an art piece for your first charity auction. I replied, definitely, let's build something new from the wreckage. I put the phone down, rested my head on the cool glass, and for the first time in months, felt my body unclench. The war was over, my life was my own. Now I see how I bought the entire fantasy. I was so desperate for a real family, and Julian Davenport was a masterful actor. He didn't just steal my money, he stole my faith in people. Don't be like I was. Never give anyone financial control without your own legal oversight, no matter how much you love them. Don't ignore the red flags just because you want the fairy tale. Don't let a partner's family swallow you whole. A mother's ambition can be a deadly weapon. Deception is usually wrapped in charm. Eleanor Davenport didn't just know about her son's infidelity. As his financial advisor, she built his entire fraudulent system, turning her knowledge into a tool to destroy me. That's not being a protective mother. It's a criminal conspiracy. I learned three things. First, insist on separate legal and financial representation. Real love is based on trust, not control. Second, the family you marry can try to tear you down, but the family you were born into, like Maya, is what rebuilds you. Third, you have a power you cannot fathom. Even when they take everything you own, they cannot have your soul. Maya finding that server wasn't an accident. It was my liberation. She reminded me of the warrior I had forgotten I was. If any piece of my journey resonates with you, I want you to know you're not alone. What would you do if you discovered your partner's own mother was helping them betray you? Your story is important, and if you drew strength from my fight, I hope you'll follow for more tales of resilience. A small note: while this narrative is based on real world patterns of narcissistic and financial abuse, some details were dramatized for clarity. If this isn't the story for you, we wish you well in finding others that are.